Oh, hello, I'm Joshua from your planet. A lot of fisheye, very sort of blurry. Here's the problem with being innovative. When you innovate, you have to do things differently. And when you do things differently, there's a chance that some dumbass is going to come along and criticize you for the things that you did, because you're making life difficult for all the people who have done things the way that they've always done them. Look at the iPhone. They took away the headphone jack, and lots of people said, "What are you doing? Are you crazy? Well, you have to have a headphone jack on a phone." Turns out everybody's sort of swung that way, and now a lot of phones don't have headphone jacks anymore. Apple won that one. They won that one because they're Apple. And the question that we're going to tackle in today's video is NEWBEEDRONE Apple? This is the NEWBEEDRONE Hummingbird F4, and this is the NEWBEEDRONE B-Brain BLV4. And they do some things differently than other quadcopters in this class. I'm Joshua Bardwell, and you're going to learn something today. I don't want to spend a ton of time in this video going over the things that these quadcopters do that's basically the same as other quadcopters in this class. They're tiny whoops. They have a 65mm wheelbase, that's the diagonal distance from motor to motor. They have 31mm props, that's pretty standard. The motors are 0802 in size for both of them, with 18,000 kV for the Hummingbird and 19,000 kV for the BLV4. And those motor specs deserve a little attention, because a lot of pilots today are going to lighter builds like this Mobeetle 6 with 0702 motors, just a little bit smaller, just a little bit lighter. This is a controversial decision, and I have tried to get a consensus from people I know who I think know a lot about tiny whoops and fly a lot of tiny whoops, and there doesn't seem to be a widespread agreement. 0702 motors are lighter and can perform pretty well. I had some question as to whether the smaller motor would have enough torque and responsiveness, and the general consensus is that yes, it does. But there are people who complain about the durability of the 0702 motors and say that they very much prefer to fly the 0802. So I don't think we're going to find a consensus on that one, but by sticking with 0802 motors, we can at least conclude that NEWBEEDRONE isn't just chasing the latest and greatest trend, which is smaller motors. The kV of the motors is another place where NEWBEEDRONE has not really followed the latest trend. So here on the Mobeetle, we can see that it's a 23,000 kV motor. And there was a time, I remember when the Happy Model Mobile 6 first released with a choice of 19,000 or 25,000 kV motors. And we were like, that's such high kV, you're gonna destroy your batteries. And I don't know if batteries have gotten better, but these days, tiny whoop pilots are flying 25,000, 28,000, even 30,000 kV motors, just preposterously high RPMs, making tons of thrust and really short flight times. I mean, even with better batteries today, the flight time on a 30,000 or a 28,000 kV motor is significantly shorter than the flight time on something like a 25, a 23, a 19,000 kV sounds practically sedate. So I'm not too critical of the fact that these guys come with motors in the 18,000 or 19,000 kV range, because I don't think these are intended as ultralight, ultra-high performance racing builds. I think they're more general, fun flying. Of course, you can race them and you can fly them hard, but you're going to get a little bit more reasonable flight time, a little bit more controllable power. And yeah, there are pilots out there like Ciati FPV who say 30,000 kV or nothing. Oh, okay, fine, 28,000 kV, I guess I'll settle. And they would just not be interested at all in something with 19,000 kV. But I think for most people, it's going to be fine. Certainly for me. Both of these quadcopters have a flight controller with built-in ExpressLRS receiver. And if you fly tiny whoops, then you probably have already done this, but If you haven't, it's time to accept that at least in the tiny whoop world, ExpressLRS is just where it's at. The range and penetration is unparalleled when it comes to built-in receivers. That's the thing. When you have a tiny whoop flight controller, you want the receiver to be as small and integrated as possible, and so it's common to build it into the flight controller. And until now, that has meant using a substandard control link like FreeSky, FlySky, Spectrum, etc. Don't be offended that I called them substandard. They simply don't have the range and penetration of modern control links like Crossfire, Ghost, and ExpressLRS. But Crossfire and Ghost require you to add an external receiver if you want to use it on your tiny whoop. ExpressLRS doesn't. The reasons for that don't matter. That's just a fact. And ExpressLRS is really where tiny whoop receivers are going. And it's a hassle because ExpressLRS can be a hassle, as I'm about to tell you in this specific instance, but the range and performance penetration are worth it. The hassle comes in when you try to bind the NEWBEEDRONE BLV4. It has an innovative feature, the first that I'm aware of, built-in diversity ExpressLRS receiver. So this receiver has actually two antennas. There's one here up top and there's one hanging out the back. And that means that there's more chances that you're going to get a useful signal and keep your LQ and your RSSI up and extend your range. Fantastic. But they developed that receiver without the participation of the ExpressLRS devs. And if you try to bind this, well, you can bind it without flashing. That is a thing. But most people who use ExpressLRS prefer to flash their receivers when they get them, and you can't do that using ExpressLRS configurator. That's not entirely true. If you want to flash this, it has been discovered that the Maytech 2.4 gigahertz diversity receiver target will work. You will get a warning that you are flashing the wrong target, but if you flash that to this receiver, it will work. But before you do that, you should check and see if at the time you are watching this, NEWBEEDRONE has been added to ExpressLRS configurator and their target is in there, because as soon as this product released, the devs, the ExpressLRS devs were like, hey, NEWBEEDRONE, if you want to, and NEWBEEDRONE was like, yeah, okay, we'll do that. And they're working now as far as I can tell. But in the early days, at least, you can flash that other target. I've actually got a whole video I made about how to bind this. So if you're having trouble binding it, whether that's because of this target problem or just because ExpressLRS is confusing and you don't know how to bind it, I'll put a link in the video description to that video and you can go check that out. I will always and forever complain about the plugs on a NEWBEEDRONE Tiny Whoop flight controller. NEWBEEDRONE uses different plugs than everybody else uses. So if you buy this, you pretty much are going to be locked into using NEWBEEDRONE motors. And that's fine. NEWBEEDRONE makes fine motors, but what if you wanted one of those 30,000 kV monster motors? What if you wanted to try that out? Well, you could certainly solder on your own plugs. Who wants to do that? Or you could direct solder to the flight controller. See these tiny little pads here? Wait, are they on the top side? There they are, they're on the top side. You could direct solder. Maybe you're fine with that, but it's freaking annoying, and I don't know any reason that they do that other than to kind of lock you into their motors, which always bugs me when vendors do things that are sort of restrictive of consumers just to try to get them to buy their products. Take a look at the flight controller on the Mobeetle 6 here, and look at this chip specifically. This long chip here is what does the on-screen display for basically all analog flight controllers. And if we were to look at the flight controllers on these NEWBEEDRONE quads, they don't have it, but they do have an OSD. The way that they did this in the past involved giving up one of the UARTs on this flight controller so that it could talk to some off-board chip that did the OSD, which was kind of annoying. It was annoying. Like, what are you going to do with the UARTs on a tiny whoop? Are you going to put a GPS on it? So probably the loss of the UART didn't hurt too much, but just it was annoying to have to remember that this was different than every other quad you'd ever set up, and if you changed the ports tab, your OSD would stop working. On these flight controllers, NEWBEEDRONE has come up with a way to handle the OSD without the Max chip and without losing a UART. So good job, NEWBEEDRONE. Whatever you're doing, it just seems like it's good, and I don't have to give anything up or be annoyed. Not really sure what to do with that information. Not feeling annoyed. Is this what happiness is? Well, that feeling didn't last for long. I found a reason to be annoyed. See that 86 on screen right here? Why is that there? This is a thing that used to happen way back when the very first digital OSDs came out. I think HD0 was one of the first to do it. The digital communication between the video transmitter or whatever's drawing the OSD and whatever is generating the OSD gets a little confused, and just random characters appear on screen for no reason, or the OSD disappears. Did you see the OSD disappear there for a second? And this was happening constantly while I was flying, and oh, there it went. It's not like an ultimate deal breaker, but it is pretty freaking annoying. Another thing that's annoying about this custom OSD chip is it means that you can't just flash these flight controllers from within Betaflight Configurator. There are some NewBeeDrone flight controllers there, but not the BeeBrain BLV4 or the Hummingbird flight controller. And the reason for this is that custom chip requires some custom code, and normally the way that you would handle this would be to submit a pull request to the Betaflight devs so that this code is included in the Betaflight code base. But there are various reasons why you might not do that, including the fact that a lot of times Betaflight devs don't choose to accept that pull request, and then what do? Well, what you do is you have your own GitHub repo. The takeaway is that if you have one of these flight controllers and you want to flash Betaflight to it, you, number one, have to rely on NewBeeDrone to build that code. So here is the NewBeeDrone GitHub Betaflight repo, and the latest release is Betaflight 4.10. Is that for real? It's possible there's another repo out there with a later release of Betaflight, but while everybody else is enjoying playing with Betaflight 4.4 release candidate, NewBeeDrone users have to wait for NewBeeDrone to compile and build and manually download the firmware and then flash it from the configurator using the load firmware local method. And again, not a total deal breaker, but kind of annoying. Leaving that chip off the flight controller leaves additional room for other stuff. These two quadcopters have 12 amp ESCs. A typical ESC on a tiny whoop would be more like 5 or 7 amps. And I'm not sure how much that really matters, because 5 or 7 amps is probably plenty for most of what we're doing, especially if we're not doing those big old 30,000 kV motors. And how many amps can our batteries really provide? But I always like having additional headroom on my ESCs. I would much rather pull 5 amps from a 12 amp rated ESC than pull 5 amps from a 7 amp rated ESC. I think I know which one's going to last longer and perform better. So I'm very happy to see that as well. The Hummingbird has a 25 milliwatt video transmitter, and that's it. It does 25 milliwatts, no more. If you're racing with it, that's fine. They're going to want you at 25 milliwatts anyway. But if you're just cruising, exploring, or doing freestyle, or just flying for yourself, then you're going to want as much output power as you can get, especially with that ExpressLRS control link that is going to be able to fly much further than your video possibly could go. The BLV4 has up to 400 milliwatts of output power. And we're actually going to pull out my tester and see how true that is. This is the Immersion RC RF power meter, and it's only $100, so it is not as accurate as a $5,000, $10,000, $30,000 piece of lab grade equipment. But it can give us a rough idea of how this video transmitter is performing. The way the video transmitter on this flight controller works is it can be set to either 5 milliwatts, 25 milliwatts, or SmartMax. And SmartMax means that it can go up to 400 milliwatts, but if it gets too hot, it'll reduce its output power to keep it from overheating and damaging itself. When I first heard about this, I was like, NewBeeDrone, that's not a feature. That's just how all video transmitters work. All video transmitters, if they overheat, they will not make their maximum rated output power. And they assume that you'll be flying and there will be airflow from the props and the wind and so forth to help keep the video transmitter cool. I guess it's good that NewBeeDrone's being honest about this. Or, like, have they actually invented something new? Only way to tell is to turn on the power meter and find out what it does. Let's start on channel raceband 8 at 5 milliwatts output power. And I would hope that it could stay at 5 milliwatts pretty much for freaking ever without any cooling or any of that nonsense. We are seeing roughly 5 milliwatts coming in, so that's good. Let's let it sit for a few minutes and see what happens. I think it's going to be fine. In fact, while we wait, let's change the channel from raceband 8 to raceband 1 and see if the frequency we're on has any effect. A little bit of a change. We're reading maybe like 1 milliwatt lower. Within the margin of error, certainly. Now let's turn it up to 25 milliwatts. It won't change to any power but 5 milliwatts. Cool. I can't get it to go to any power except 5 milliwatts. Okay, I figured it out. It seems like they shipped the quadcopter with Betaflight's low power disarm feature enabled. What that means is that when you disarm the quad, the video transmitter goes to a low power. When you arm the quad, it goes to high power. The reason that they do this, I asked, is that they had some customers who were burning out their video transmitter by leaving it at high power without any airflow, and it was overheat and burn out. So we're gonna go ahead and disable that for the purpose of this testing though, and then we will continue. Let's go and turn the output power up to 25 milliwatts. Boom, there we go. Race 1, 25 milliwatts, 28 milliwatts, pretty good. And on race 8, we're getting about 29 milliwatts. Would your race director kick you out for being at 30 milliwatts instead of 25? I don't know. It's going to heat up. A lot of times we see this with video transmitters. The 25 milliwatt setting is calibrated a little bit hot so that as it heats up a little bit, it comes down to 25 milliwatts. But, yeah, we're in the ballpark. Well, okay. Time for the big boy. Max. Whoa, 400 milliwatts. Legit. That's legit 400 milliwatts. Now, I am sure it is going to overheat and it is going to come down. Let's see what it settles at here just at room temperature. Oh, it's coming down fast. Is it just going to come down to 25 milliwatts? Oh, it's all over the place. Interesting. Oh, it's all over the place. I asked NEWBEEDRONE for more information about the SmartMax system to see how it differs from normal video transmitters that just get hot and then reduce their output power. And their argument is that those video transmitters are actually damaging themselves. They're not just safely turning themselves down, they are overheating and crippling themselves, essentially. What NEWBEEDRONE does is detect the heat buildup and then intentionally reduce the output power to try to extend the longevity of the video transmitter. Now, I gotta say, I've had a lot of analog video transmitters for a long time, and I can't think of one that I've burned out simply from leaving it without airflow, but I usually don't leave them without airflow. I know that it's not good to do that, and I'll either power them down or go fly and give them some airflow. So maybe this is a failure mode that NEWBEEDRONE has seen more of in their business than I've seen in my personal life. Only one thing left to do, and that's fly it. Let's go. Not impressed with the camera. That's the first thing I noticed. Look how the highlights are super blown out. Right there in the wall, just white. It's really bad. It's really bad. Right here, like, makes it really hard to see what I'm doing. I've never been impressed with NEWBEEDRONE's cameras, I think. Oh God, see, so bad. But we got, let's see, we got 400 milliwatts, right? Where can we go with 400 milliwatts? Oh yeah. Oh yeah, let's go down here. Geez, I'm sitting behind the house. I'm facing the wrong way. Jeez. How's my battery? That's pretty good. This is pretty impressive range. I mean, it's 400 milliwatts worth of range. So, oh, see? Didn't see that coming. In fact, the image was so bad that I reached out to Aaron Ciotti, who I knew was also testing this, and I asked him, is the NEWBEEDRONE cam really this bad, or is my camera just out of focus? Because looking at this still, I thought, God, did I test this whole thing with the camera out of focus? And he said, no, it really is that bad. But it's not the camera, it's the video transmitter. Something about the way they implement the OSD means that there is kind of a milky overlay over the whole image. Here is the RunCam Nano 4 on the Acrobee. This is Ciotti's test. And here is the exact same camera run through a different video transmitter. Boom! Nothing changed except the video transmitter. So actually, the camera is just fine. It's just the NEWBEEDRONE video transmitter and OSD that is screwing it up. One way or the other, the image looks really bad. I'm going to blame the fisheye in the camera for my complete inability to keep the quad from crashing, and also the the whiteout, yeah, so that I can't see the details that I would want to see. I really do feel like this 20,000 kV is, I mean, if you gave me 25,000 kV, I'd be like, oh, the power, and I would really love it. But I also like flying for more than a minute at a time. Oof. Okay, I'm starting to get used to the camera. Why aren't letters appearing on my OSD randomly? It just doesn't have the power to pull out. There we go. I mean, I can make it work, but I need to really get on it. See, if I don't immediately flip over and get on the throttle, I'm smacking the ground. And this is where those 27,000, 28,000 kV motors wouldn't have this problem. Oh boy. That's a little yaw washout there. Do we have a motor have a problem? Let's try it again. Oh yeah, it did it again. Woo! I wonder if it does it both directions. If it does it one direction, it might be a bad motor, bad prop, but if it does it both directions, it's probably a design issue. Well, only one way to find out. We'll just go to the right. Oh, that was fine. Let's try again. Nope, did it there. Yeah. Okay. Well, we have found the limits of its performance envelope, if you will. It just does not like being asked to do that big dive. It just, the motor can't spin fast enough, I guess. And it doesn't seem like the motor's stalling, because then we would just death roll, but it seems like the motor is spinning up probably to max, and then it can't spin anymore, and the whole quad sort of flattens out, but the PID controller is still in control. Interesting. Let me just refresh my memory of what it feels like to fly the NEWBEEDRONE. This is the NEWBEEDRONE 6. I got a full review of it on my channel. It's a little bit lighter. Actually, I haven't put them on the scale yet. I think it's a little lighter. It's got 0702 motors, 23,000 kV instead of 19,000 kV. And the first thing I noticed is that the camera looks way better. Like, it seems to have more detail for sure and better dynamic range. But it's not perfect. Nope, definitely not perfect. The highlights are still really blown out. I think it's a little better than the NEWBEEDRONE camera. And maybe the tune is a little sharper. I mean, I can't be sure, but it does feel just a little bit more, a little better in the turns. It's probably the higher kV motors. How about this test? Can it do this? Can it do this thing here? Let's try it. No problem. It's still a tiny whoop, so if I don't get on the throttle early, it will tank into the ground, but it's just got a little bit more power, thrust to weight, whatever, than the NEWBEEDRONE. What about this? Could I have seen this great? Maybe. I could see it instead of crashing into it.
It's funny, there wasn't as much difference between the NEWBEEDRONE and the NEWBEEDRONE as I expected. The NEWBEEDRONE has higher kV motors, and I think I could feel that it was a little more powerful and a little more punchy, especially when I was trying to do the power loops and I punched up. It actually did punch up a little bit instead of just kind of feeling like it was groaning to get there. Maybe I'm starting to appreciate why Ciotti likes those 30,000 kV motors so much, because like maybe it'll start to approach the agility of a 5-inch and not just be constantly tanking into the ground if you're not constantly on the throttle. How much difference is there in the weight anyway? So this is the NEWBEEDRONE, and it is 17.3 grams without a battery. The BeBrain BLV4 is, wow, 25 grams, 24 grams. Hummingbird. Wow. Wow. 26 grams. Sheesh. Hold on a second. Okay, just to be fair, I went and got a analog Mobula 6. So it's not the ultra light like the Mobeetle. 19.9 grams. Shoosh. Okay, well that's going to be my excuse for today why I was having trouble hitting those power loops. Not my innate skill and experience with the platform, but the weight. Like some of the other criticisms in this video, I asked NEWBEEDRONE about this, and they said, yeah, we could make a 17 gram or 19 gram quad if we wanted to, but we'd prefer to build something that's a little more durable. So their argument is they're trading flight performance for durability. Is NEWBEEDRONE Apple? That's the question that I proposed at the beginning of this video. And what I mean by that is, like, Apple does new things, innovative things. Sometimes they're just beloved. Sometimes they are annoying, and people kind of buy Apple products anyway because the overall package is so compelling. And in NEWBEEDRONE's case, I'm not sure that they're actually pulling it off. Like, I want to like it because I like innovation on principle. I like the fact that they're trying different things and not just copying what everybody else is doing. But like, some of the things they're doing just seem self-serving, like the motor connectors that only work with their motors. Or the fact that they still don't sell a quad with a BT 2.0 connector, even though it is categorically better than a PH 2.0 connector, because the BT 2.0 connector would require them to license it from Beta FPV, and they don't want to do that for business reasons. Some of the things they're doing seem like a good idea, but are a little bit poorly executed, like the on-screen display. No OSD chips, so you have more room for bigger ESCs. Yay! Glitchy OSD that comes in and out while you're flying? Yeah, not so impressed. But some of the things they're doing just seem worse than their competitors. Like, the camera is not that great, and the weight of the damn things is really, really high. They've got a lifetime warranty on their frames, but their frames also break more than other manufacturers' frames. So like, if you're, lifetime warranty, but I also have to constantly be swapping my electronics. It seems like for every sort of thing that they do that is really, really good, there's a drawback. Well, if you do want to pick up these products, there are links in the video description below where you can get them. I'll also link you to my review of the Mobeetle 6 and the Mobula 6. They're a little bit older, but I think they'll still give you a sense of what's going on with these quadcopters. There's links down below to all of that stuff, and they are affiliate links. And that means is that when you make any purchase at the affiliated store, and after clicking that link, I get a commission. It's an easy way for you to support the channel. Doesn't cost you anything. Just click the link, do your shopping, check out, and makes it possible for me to keep doing what I'm doing here. I'll also put a card on screen if you want to check out those other videos, and I'll see you there.